What it do, everybody? It's your boy King Crowder, checking back in with another edition again with history we may not know, a history that's unknown. Today's subject will be on the Red Summer of 1919 in Washington, D.C. Why is this important to learn? This story is based off of how yellow journalism in the media can have a severe impact on how we respond and how we go into different things. Today's subject, we'll take a deep dive on why the race riots in DC happened around this time. Number one, most people around that time were not educated enough to read, so a lot of pictures needed to be used to enforce imagery and messages. Mind you, Gone with the Wind and other things were going on around this time, which sparked a lot of race riots around the country. This one was such a unique story to me because this time in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., we saw how a yellow journalism story of a black man having sexually assaulted a white woman had a negative impact on the people in that area. So when that story went about that the woman was sexually assaulted without any proof, discourse, or conversation, immediately riots went out in the street. What was really severe was that how you saw the Washington Post post this article, write about it, pictures, and discuss it without any credible research or information. The reason why I found this story so shocking is because we see this constantly repeated at this point in history, but it's very informative that we mention this in the American story and American history when we talk about things. During this time, you got to understand that a mob riots happened for roughly 4 days, from July 19th to July 24th. It was rioting, looting, fighting, and race wars all across the street. You must say that the people in the police departments didn't protect the black citizens. They were kind of protecting the white businesses and organizations around that time. The reason why I found this so interesting because literally Woodrow Wilson waited 4 or 5 days being in the nation's capital before he enlisted and got a martial law to calm everything down. Before Woodrow Wilson, as the acting president, made the laws and enforcement, it felt like he always let it fester a little bit. He didn't linger down and act and lay down the law early on. As you can see in his presidency, when these race riots would happen, all during that red summer of roughly 100 years ago, you began to see how the spirit and how that type of energy just festered. Another reason why this point in the story was so interesting is that we never really talked about how both races were definitely attacking, were fighting each other and going hard at each other. But you tremendously always saw the cops leaning more towards the white side instead of being equally imbalanced in the law. This story lets you know how sometimes our ideology can infect us even above our job warranted. We already know that we have issues and stuff staying with the police officers, but stories like this break it down, how it even comes from the top of where our organizations go for, which is DC, the nation's capital. The nation's capital is the mecca of holding up civil liberties and understandings. We even see at this time how that was not followed upon and how our foundations of the laws can be questioned. The story is the things we need to always watch for and the impact that happened later on. The story of American history is why it's always important to give a full comprehensive scope on it. The reason why this mob thing on Washington, D.C. is another reason why it was important and why it was a nugget. All of those black businesses that were terrorized and destroyed never received proper funding, never received any help and assistance to recoup what they lost, and never got the support they needed. Those black people just took a loss and they had to move forward and move on without it. So when you think about those gaps, those issues constantly happen across the United States, you can see the gaps in areas such as the Southeast DC or certain parts of the country have never been recuperated from it. So when we talk about the story of the United States, it's always very important to show this was happening right before the Great Depression happened. One thing that I think is always missing is that these riots and issues across the summer made the Great Depression happen so severely, and that's why the economic devastation was so severe. These red summers built up to when everything burst because it was so much fighting internally. We always think of the Great Depression and different things like it's happening without its proper context. So I like to shed light on the story of American history so you can know how it happened. American history is such a detailed and extensive subject that we don't dive into. Again, I'm chiming out on the situation of Washington, D.C. in 1919, but I definitely think it's important to know how the media had influence, how local law enforcement had influence, and how the external factors affected us long term. All right, man, I'm checking out. Peace.